Welcome back to Those Happy Places, the podcast that treats theme parks, rides, and attractions like literature. I'm Buddy Duquesne.
And I'm Alice White.
And Alice, guess what?
What?
This is our second time doing this episode.
That's right. Unfortunately, listeners, our first recording of this episode was eaten by the internet and no longer exists on this plane or any recognizable plane.
Yes, unfortunately, it has shifted dimensions. It belongs to the web now. And I think the cool thing about the web is that there's a giant spider on it that devours podcast episodes. So we did feed the spider, which I think stops it from coming into our world.
Yes, we've successfully kept the spider at bay, and therefore we live to fight another day. So we're gonna record this episode again, which unfortunately I think means a little bit that it might not feel as with that, what did you call it? The genuine feeling of discovery.
Well, yeah, because so often we come into our podcast with just a couple of notes and we're not really sure what we're going to say next. And this time around, we're very sure of what we're going to say next because we're trying to hit those same points. So it might not feel as loosey-goosey, as unplanned. We might lack some of that live podcasting magic. But then again, we might discover new, deeper things about our subject today.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. We want to thank, first of all, I'd like to extend just the biggest, warmest thank you to listener Gerardo, who sent us the kindest email. He listens to our show and has engaged with our show and sent us some really good ideas for future episodes. And Gerardo, thank you so much for that email and for the idea for this episode.
Yeah, when we read that email, Alice, you and I, we talked about it right away. And we were so excited to have this piece of fan mail with all of these great ideas in it. And this one word popped out at me. And I was like, we got to do an episode about Diegesis at the theme parks. And we right away started like doing some research and getting our thoughts together. And here we are with a episode just for you, Gerardo, and everybody else who listens to it.
So let's go ahead and get started with a quick definition. What is diegesis?
Diegesis can loosely be defined as a style of storytelling that presents an interior view of the fictional world. So what does that mean? Because that's kind of hard to parse. Well, it kind of assumes a internal logic of a particular fictional setting. So diegetic things that happen within a narrative make sense within the fictional world and are separate from our world. We, the audience, viewing, listening to, reading the fiction, know that there are separations, and calling attention to that is another form of diegesis. We kind of presume a detachment between both the speaker and the audience and the story. And it sounds like it kind of means just the general like form of fiction that fiction takes on a day-to-day basis. And that's kind of true because we kind of prefer this kind of detachment, this not quite living in it sort of fiction where things can happen in our fiction that are separate from our world, and also things can happen in the telling of the fiction that are separate from the fiction itself. And I hope that I have made myself clear, Alice, because that sounds like a lot, right?
It sounds like a lot. I think maybe a good example, something that maybe listeners who are unfamiliar with the idea of diegesis, maybe probably the most common use of the word diegesis or diegetic when talking about film, for example, would be diegetic sound.
Diegetic sound, specifically music, I think.
Yes, specifically music. So when you're watching a film and the characters in the film start hearing music and and responding to music, or you see music being played, whether it's at a party or a concert, or they're walking down the street and there's somebody busking with music on the ground. If there's music being performed or being produced on screen that the characters can hear, that is diegetic music. Whereas the opposite of that would be like film scores.
Non-diegetic music.
Non-diegetic music is the film score. So you're watching, say, The Lord of the Rings, and the Fellowship crests the top of the hill, and the Fellowship theme starts swelling, and it fills you with an emotion, and it has meaningful storytelling purpose, but the characters, of course, do not hear that music. That music is for you, the audience alone. It is non-diegetic.
Right. It provides something for the audience, either emotional, or maybe it communicates something about what the characters are doing, maybe what they're thinking or feeling. Music can fill in a lot of those gaps, but it is not for the characters to hear. If Indiana Jones can hear his theme music, Alice, he is the luckiest person ever.
Yeah, everybody wants a good theme song to have adventures by, but the characters cannot hear their theme songs, with the exception of probably Deadpool.
Right,
So,
he probably hears all of his own music.
But of course, yeah, that's the exception and like a deliberate break of the fourth wall rather than the rule. But we've talked about the fourth wall before, and we've talked about the difference between being in a story versus just watching a story. And this is where I think diegetics and theme park rides start to come together. The theme park ride just on its own, it like naturally in its form invites you into the story.
Yeah, the fourth wall is definitely less pronounced in many theme park rides. And yeah, just like in our episode about it, the fourth wall has varying degrees of existing and not existing with theme park rides, much more than in other media, where if the fourth wall gets broken in a movie, it's like a specific purposeful call out to the fourth wall itself, and that's what's happening there. But if the fourth wall is broken in a theme park ride, it's different because it's experiential, right? You're supposed to be living the experience in some way. So we end up with a very different kind of set of rules, and that plays into a very different way of diegesis or diegetic things being included or playing out within theme park rides specifically, because every piece of media, every different medium has its own relationship with diegetics. There are some movies where they make an effort to only include diegetic music, even if that diegetic music is like very appropriate. So that's like kind of bending the line a little bit, right? Like if every time they turn on the radio, just the right music is playing, that would be a bending of the diegetic line. But in theme park rides, it's even wobblier, I would say, because the difference between what exists in the universe of the fiction of the ride, especially rides that tell stories, and what audiences actually see and interact with, and what is there just for the audiences is changing all the time. And I think there's no better example of what can be both diegetic and not diegetic than the ride vehicles themselves. So that's what this episode's main argument is that the ride vehicles at different theme parks are constantly in a state of diegetic flux, unlike anything in any other medium, be it movies or video games or literature. The theme park diegetics are so wonky, and we're here to talk about it today.
Yeah, so I think we should start with a couple of examples of like what theme park vehicles we'll be talking about specifically.
And we should probably give kind of a definition of like what a good diegetic theme park vehicle is.
Right. Do you want to start with like the most obvious, like really, really good theme park vehicle?
Which one are you thinking when you said that?
Indiana Jones.
Oh, you want to start with Indiana Jones Adventure?
That's the best one.
Okay, sure, absolutely. And I think this one is so good because it really gets to why this line is so wobbly. So in the Indiana Jones Adventure, Temple of the Forbidden Eye, you board a Jeep. That is the ride vehicle that you are in. Now, this is a special Jeep, Alice. It has, what is it, 4 rows of 5 people?
Yeah, it's a really big Jeep.
It's a really, really big Jeep. Way bigger than most Jeeps. But it also doesn't have a roof. So it's a really interesting thing where the perhaps ideal in-universe ride vehicle for this attraction is a Jeep. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Indiana Jones does a lot of work around Jeeps. Jeep is a good choice here. In fact, Alice, there's a Jeep out front of the ride, out front of the attraction, that is from the film. It's from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Wait, the Jeep that's like on display out there, that's not just a fake Jeep, that's really one from the film?
Yeah, that's a real picture car. There's even some leftovers on there from filming. There's like a golf ball looking kind of thing on an antenna, and that was to help stuntmen move around the car while they were filming on it. So that's a real picture car from the actual film. So that's so cool, right?
That's so cool.
Indiana Jones hangs out on Jeeps, does stunts on Jeeps. You're going to be like him in a Jeep, right?
Sure.
But here's all of this weird stuff about this Jeep that we're supposed to agree is just kind of part of the fiction. So
right, the fact that it's enormous and doesn't have a roof and has seatbelts that look like every other ride seatbelt with the yellow tab to pull on, and
right, even little nets for your earthly belongings.
Yeah, those things that you just accept as, well, we're going on a theme park ride, so this is just how the theme park ride looks. But you're given an extremely good in-universe reason to be in a Jeep, even to be in a really big Jeep. The ride, the Indiana Jones ride and the safety video before you get on the ride, like, specifically show this Jeep as being the vehicle you're going to travel in. There's an old timey black and white video with the 5-person 5x4, like 20 people to a car Jeep cruising on through the temple.
Yeah, and
you're never given a reason to doubt that this is the diegetic ride vehicle for the experience that you are about to be in.
Right, and if Indiana Jones himself were to travel into this temple, he would do it on a Jeep like this.
Exactly.
And that's why I think the Jeep feels so right. But there's some other stuff about the way the Jeep is deployed, I think, that make it even more sense. Like, along the course of the ride, there's never a path that you have to go down that the Jeep can't fit down.
It even goes across like a rope bridge, and the Jeep should not be able to go across that rope bridge.
As we all know, ancient idol worshipping cultures in their temples built Jeep-sized rope bridges. And that's just true, Alice. And if you can't accept that, then you're not a real historian.
Okay, you know what? I'll take it.
Thank you. But, the Jeep also, the engine turns off halfway through the ride, right? There's a part where you turn on the headlights to see the bug shadows and things like that. There's all sorts of ways that the ride vehicle becomes part of the fiction and therefore becomes more believable. Yes. The things that we kind of accept as part of the fiction, as outside the fiction, are the fact that at one point the Jeep plays the Indiana Jones theme music.
It does, over the radio.
Now, in what world, Alice? Because, Sala radios in at the beginning and he's like, "Hey, watch out! The Jeep's kind of it's got bad brakes. Go slow." And then the radio just starts playing music to accompany every situation. So that is all non-diegetic. Right. So the line between diegesis or diegetic and non-diegetic things is always shifting, especially in the case of theme park rides. I think in some cases, the ride vehicles are very, very diegetic and successfully place the audience within the fiction. And in other cases, the ride vehicles are completely non-diegetic. They have like no real world analogs, no fictional analogs.
Right. The example that Gerardo used in the email, for example, just to bring it back to our good friend Gerardo here, he used the example of the Little Mermaid ride.
Yeah, the Little Mermaid one in California Adventure.
In California Adventure, to go through the Little Mermaid ride, you sit in a clamshell, and then you kind of just float through the story of the Little Mermaid. There's nothing. I mean, sure, the clamshell is thematically appropriate for being in the water, but it itself, the clamshell, serves no narrative purpose to the story.
Right, and not to mention the clamshells are on a conveyor belt style Omnimover system. Praise the Omnimover.
Praise the Omnimover.
And the thing is that the shell is like never explained. There's no calling out of the shell like, oh, hey, our audience is in giant shells. And on top of that, there's another layer of diegetic removal from the story, because at the very beginning, the seagull, who I want to say his name is Chomper.
Scuttle.
Right. Okay. So Chomper at the beginning is like, hey, here's the story of my friend Ariel and how she grew legs or something like that. And then the shells go underwater. There's a neat projected water effect. And then you, again, float through the story. So here's a ride vehicle that is perfectly functional. It works really well. There are speakers inside the shell, so you can get certain sound effects timed to the ride. It can point you at certain places at certain times. It can move and wobble. It's a very nice ride vehicle. It works, but it has no diegetic connection to the story or the fiction. It's simply a pretty themed moving chair, to steal another phrase from our friend Gerardo, who called them moving chairs. And I agree with that. It's just a chair that moves. And a lot of ride vehicles could be called that. However, I think ride vehicles become more powerful when they have diegetic purpose within the story. So to kind of transition to a perhaps more effective diegetic use of a car, let's use an actual car as an example. Alice, I'd like to call your attention to Exhibit C, Roger Rabbit's Car-Toon Spin.
I love that ride.
I know, and this is not the first time that we've brought it up, but this is a very well-themed dark ride, and it makes excellent use of the space, of perspective, and all sorts of different things. But we don't talk about the ride vehicle enough, and the ride vehicle is Benny the Cab, the actual character from the movie Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right. You get into Benny the Cab, you jump into the cab, just like if you were a character in the film.
Just
I mean,
like
yeah,
Roger
he doesn't have
and Eddie do in the film.
Exactly. I mean, he doesn't have a roof on him, you know.
He never does.
Oh, he never does?
He never does. The ride vehicles look exactly like the character from the film, albeit smaller. I don't remember that. They even have the headlights as eyes, just like in the movie.
And so you get into the cab just like you were Roger Rabbit himself. But they're not saying, "Hey, you're Roger Rabbit." You're hopping in the cab for a ride through the city.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you're doing exactly what you would do in a cab, which is hop in a cab and go somewhere.
Right. So, but right away, a couple of things happen. Benny the Cab slips on a puddle of dip. And he goes into a big spin. A
big uncontrolled spin.
Which is another thing that happens in the film at one point. It's
taken right out of the scene. Benny slips across some dip and skids for like a second.
But in the ride, he skids for, I don't know, like 7 minutes, however long the ride is. But that skid allows you, is the reason why you have control of the steering wheel and why you're able to make the car spin.
Right, you're trying to spin Benny in or out of the spin, whichever one you're supposed to do.
Both. Neither.
Spin into a spin.
Spin into and then out of the spin,
right.
But then you can't ever stop spinning.
Right, so you just keep spinning.
But that gives you a very good diegetic reason for having the spin control wheel in front of you. You get to control how fast or slow you want to spin. I personally usually spend the entire ride spinning my car in as many circles as possible to make my my co-pilot sick.
Right, and there are two kinds of people in the world, Alice: those who spin and those who try to steer Benny as well as they can. And I am a type B, steer Benny sort of person.
Definitely, I'm a type A. I want to just spin around in as many circles as possible.
Right.
I hit those turns as fast as I can so that it makes my spin even faster. That's that's how I ride this ride.
That's why you and I get different cars. But we gotta call it out. Benny makes a lot of sense here. Now, there are some things about Benny that are non-diegetic, right? For example, we see Roger in Benny, I guess. He's spinning as we start to spin. We see Roger spinning around in a Benny.
Yes, okay, so we do see that.
We see that. We also see people riding in other Bennies as we go through the ride, which raises all sorts of questions like, is Benny one of a bunch of cabs that like live in a warehouse somewhere? Is Benny a unique person? Is this the same Benny? Lots and lots of different questions, because Roger seemed to know Benny in the movie.
Yeah.
So like, I'd always thought Benny was one guy, but there's a lot of Bennies here.
Maybe there's a fleet of Bennies.
A fleet of Bennies. Maybe they're like a hive mind. They all share information. So like, one Benny, you know all the Bennies.
I like that.
And all the Bennies know you. That would be really cool. But that's never explained. And we just kind of take that as part of the separation between us and the fiction. This is all a non-diegetic element of the ride. Things that are not actually part of the ride itself, but part of the way that we experience the ride, which I guess is another way to look at diegetics. Not part of the fiction, part of the way we experience the fiction. And I think that's a really succinct way to put it.
Yeah, that's and that's what, like, specifically, you couldn't use, I think, that definition in any other form of media. I mean, you kind of could with film, I suppose, but that kind of immersiveness, the experiencing the fiction, is really pretty specific to theme park rides, I think, because you aren't just viewing the fiction, you are in and part of the fiction.
Yeah, there's a little bit more to talk about, maybe like with video games and the way that you experience a video game, and the interfaces that you use to experience it, and the levels to which those are explained in the fiction.
Sure.
So
yeah,
like
different maps examples that you can see. And
like if you have a map, does it look hand drawn? Does it look like a map that the character would see? Is because that would make it more diegetic. If you have an inventory, is it set up like an actual backpack and it can only fit certain things? Because that's more diegetic than an infinite inventory of hundreds of items and all of the, I don't know, cheese wheels that you can pick up in Skyrim. Yeah, that's non-diegetic. Obviously, this character isn't walking around with dozens of cheese wheels falling out of their pockets. Like, so there are limits to the reality of the experience that we kind of push aside in our brains because they're not important to how we experience the fiction. Or really, they're not important to the reality of the fiction, and they allow us to experience the fiction.
But maybe what makes the theme park ride diegetic experience, like what makes that so unique and special, I think probably comes from the actual act of movement, of motion. I think that we'll take Indiana Jones again, for example, the movement of the Jeep and the like Jeep-like turns that it made, the super sharp kind of dangerous turns that a Jeep can make, and the bumps in the road and stuff like that add to the experience of like why a theme park and why these diegetic things put into the theme park ride are so important and unique is it is so immersive, and little things like that. Like, you could just be on a Jeep in Indiana Jones and just be sailing through smooth as anything, but they choose to put in actual diegetic, like the brakes don't quite work properly. When you drive over the rope bridge, you do bump over every slab of wood that makes the bridge. You feel everything. And it's not just about music, it's not just about even what you see, but about what you're actually feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's that feeling and the way that we can add or subtract those little details from the experience, and the way that that's so purposeful and designed, that makes theme park rides and attractions so cool from a diegetic standpoint. Because so many choices are being made, either to allow something to exist or not exist within the ways that you're moving the audience. And that's why the ride vehicle is such a cool point of focus for talking about that, right? Because there are plenty of bad examples in Disneyland alone of really, really non-diegetic ride vehicles. I think just about everything in Fantasyland except Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Right, where you're just kind of in a wooden cart that is maybe vaguely carved in the theme of, say, Pinocchio or Snow White, or you know what, Peter Pan. You get on a really cool boat in Peter Pan.
That is really cool and pretty darn diegetic. It even flies the way you would expect it to in the universe of Peter Pan. Now, nobody ever says, and Tinkerbell will enchant your flying boat, and that's how you'll take off. Nobody gives it fictional purpose. So the ride has a very well themed car,
but it's not given. There's no diegetic reason for a pirate ship flying through the bedroom of the Darlings and out the window.
Right.
You can't fit a whole ship in the bedroom in a nursery of a London townhome. That's just ridiculous, buddy.
Well, that's just because you lack the courage, Alice, to try it. But also, the size of this vehicle and the way that it moves only makes sense from the context of it's a theme park ride. It needs to seat 4 adults or 6 with their kids, I guess. But that's it. That's the reason it's the size it is. That's the reason it's the shape it is, because it's a Peter Pan ride. So it exists completely non-fictionally.
Yes.
The Alice in Wonderland ride, you climb inside the caterpillar. That's terrifying.
Because the caterpillar is a character with feelings, and
he's a huge jerk, and you also encounter him in the ride.
Even though you're sitting on him.
Even though you're sitting in him, Alice, not on him.
In him.
You open a side hatch on his body and climb in. Same with Dumbo the Flying Elephant in Dumbo's Flying Circus.
You're sitting in Dumbo.
In Dumbo.
Right.
There are giant plastic seats in Dumbo.
But that kind of thing is adorable and looks cute and makes sense maybe for small children, but if you try to think about it diegetically, it totally falls apart. It is a theme park ride, specifically existing to be a theme park ride, and there's nothing wrong with that.
You're being silly. They're not actually terrifying. It's fun and exciting to get inside the caterpillar or climb aboard Dumbo and go through the adventure of your favorite friends. That's fun. We're not trying to be the dark truth of the theme park ride industry.
No, of course not. And of course, every single ride vehicle is chosen for a reason. People like the Imagineers at Disney don't do anything on accident. There's a lot of design work and a lot of thought that gets put into this, which is why I think that it's important that these ride vehicles kind of exist on a spectrum. With fully diegetic on one end and fully non-diegetic on the other end, and you can kind of pick and choose which diegetic and non-diegetic elements that you want to include in your ride vehicle. And I think they probably go through months of conversations about what kind of vehicle, what kind of of experience that they want to, what kind of emotions even that they want to convey with how people get on the ride. Not just what they see, but actually how they get on the ride, which is why, I mean, Disney and their design work are so legendary.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's not accidental.
You can buy merchandise that is focused specifically on like the silhouettes of the ride vehicles. Like,
right, you can purchase a toy version of the Space Mountain like rocket.
Now,
just
how
the rocket itself.
is the rocket?
I don't know. It's very small.
It also doesn't have any kind of life support systems. I mean, we talked about this when we were making up a Space Mountain movie based on Ponders's messages.
Such a good idea.
It is. And call us, Disney. That one's not free. Episode 20 for those of you who are just joining us. Now, Alice, I want to talk about a couple classic examples and maybe a couple of examples of other theme parks. Like, I'd like to talk about like Universal Studios a little because they don't get enough love on this show.
They do not get enough love on this show, and I think diegetic ride vehicles is something that they do extremely well.
Yeah.
The best example, of course, is the of Universal diegetic ride vehicles has to be the Jurassic Park River Adventure.
That's perfect because the Jurassic Park River Adventure is a theme park ride at a theme park featuring dinosaurs. So the fiction is you climb in a theme park ride sized boat. And
it's a theme park ride.
Right, and the boat is shaped like a theme park ride and thus has 4 rows of 5. And that makes sense because you need people to move through the theme park ride.
Right.
So there's no questions to be asked about why these boats exist or why they're shaped the way they are. On top of that, they even have little diegetic elements that imply added safety features that had been thought of by Jurassic Park's designers, such as the first aid kit and flashlight that you can see kind of embedded into the body of the boat. So like, overall, it's a really perfect ride vehicle. Like, it's completely diegetic to what its purpose is. It exists within the fiction so well.
It is fully in canon with the fiction of Jurassic Park. The film, the universe of Jurassic Park, has these boats in existence, and so you get in one. Yeah. And then you go on a theme park ride. It's not just a theme park ride, it's a theme park ride designed after a theme park ride.
Right. So it's the layers of removal for the audience are non-existent. The only way that it could be more diegetic is if it were Ford Explorers on an electric track with like bubble ceilings, because
or those cool like glass balls that they ride around in Jurassic World.
Yeah, like those would be really cool. I wonder what a ride featuring those would look like and feel like, but I bet it would look a lot like those scenes from Jurassic World. Like, that's just what they would be, because that is something that was designed to be a theme park ride. So that's what it would be. It would just be that, but something bad would happen along the way because that's the universal plot structure.
Yes. You are going on a ride or having an experience, and then that should be normal, and then all of a sudden it's not normal anymore.
Something goes bad.
The something goes bad narrative is so normal for you. I'm sure we've talked about it already.
We definitely brought it up.
I love it. And also, listeners, if you're interested in more Jurassic Park talk, we do have an entire episode dedicated to Jurassic Park, the Jurassic Park River Adventure.
Specifically.
So we talk more about where those certain design elements come from in that, but specifically the ride vehicle is entirely diegetic. Every and that happens with a lot of Universal rides. When you get on the Simpsons ride, for example, you're hopping into a roller coaster car, right? Like that, you are in line to ride the roller coaster at Krusty Land, and then they put you in the ride, and then you get on it.
It's designed exactly like a roller coaster because, I mean, that's what it is.
And you sit 4x4, which is not totally unusual for a roller coaster setup.
No, not entirely unusual, but
it's a little big for a roller coaster car.
There's a weird intro though, where the car goes up an elevator shaft. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's a little weird, but that's just getting you into the room with the big screen. it's not wholly, it's not too crazy of a feeling, and it could. Maybe it could be improved by just tilting the car backwards, so it was like you're going up a roller coaster,
like a
hill.
Clack. Yeah, that would be pretty good.
That would probably improve that moment.
You know, Alice, there's one attraction at Universal Studios that I think does the whole diegetic thing really well, inviting audiences into the fiction, and that attraction is the tram tour.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
I love the tram tour.
The tram is a character, isn't it? The fiction that it takes place in is not a fiction, it's reality. And then once in a while, the tram guide will invite you to kind of play in fiction with them. So, like, when you enter the Tomb of the Mummy, and then there are, like, creepy lights, and then the tram guide is dead, or whatever. Or like, oh no, here we go, we're going to Kong Island, look out. And oh no, the Fast and the Furious are Tokyo drifting, look out. Oh no, it's Whoville, look out.
Right. So the fun part about the tram tour, and I think the fiction that you get to experience while being on the tram tour is, you get to experience completely nonfiction, real life, like, movie experiences. You get to go through backlots and big studios where they're actually filming, doing actual work there, and that's extremely cool. It gets people this awesome, like, look into how movie making works and what makes it magical. But also the tram ride itself, the iconic idea of being on a tram that's going through the Universal backlot, you see that in films sometimes. They even show clips of it, of all the times that the Universal tram has featured in actual movies. So you're kind of given this opportunity to think, well, maybe I, in my passing tram, am also going to be in a film or featured in a film. You become immersed in this idea of the act of filmmaking, which in itself is a little larger than life, is a little fictional, a little bit to people who this isn't their normal life. You're like, oh, here's this completely fictional idea of being on a movie set, but it's here, it's real, it's happening in my face. Along with, these little detours you take where you go on Skull Island and meet King Kong, or you drive, Jaws jumps out at you, and which is such a cool thing to happen, where you're immersed then in your favorite movies.
Yeah,
but you do it in a nonfiction setting at the same time. It is a really, really unique, like, entertainment structure that I really enjoy.
It's really cool, and as it keeps changing, they keep playing with this line between the fiction of the tour, like, oh no, the Fast and the Furious, like, really are driving around us, or like, oh no, we're really being attacked by King Kong.
And then as soon as you're done with it, you drive away from it, and then they tell you, oh, this was achieved with this kind of 3D screen, this was this kind of cool technology, here's some cool behind the scenes facts.
Right. And so
they break the fiction right away.
So the fiction is purely temporary, but I think what's cool is the way that the fictional pieces interact with the tram. This very solid, ordinary, just run-of-the-mill tram, and make it feel like it can exist in the fiction. And I think that's what's so powerful about it.
Yeah, a great example in the King Kong 360 3D experience. While you're sitting there watching King Kong fight dinosaurs, one of the dinosaurs rips off the back end of the tram. You see the tram, or you see a piece of tram in the dinosaur's mouth and gets, like, thrown away, and animated tourists going, no.
Dude, those people died.
Yeah, definitely. Well, maybe King Kong catches them and puts them back down safely.
That sounds nice.
He's a nice boy.
Yeah, I can imagine that his grip would be very fuzzy.
So you actually like physically see on the screen the tram being interacted with. You're not just seeing King Kong fight dinosaurs. King Kong is fighting dinosaurs, and occasionally he jumps on top of the tram and the whole thing moves, and the tram becomes a character in the story.
Yeah. And that's
cool.
So cool. Now, Alice, I can't end the Universal Studios section without talking about maybe my least favorite car there. And I know you know what I'm going to say.
Yes. And I was surprised to hear that this was your least favorite car, but you have some really good reasons.
Yeah. Alice, we don't have this in Hollywood anymore. It's still barely hanging on in Orlando, but the E.T. ride is so weird with its use of ride vehicle, and the question of the diegetics of it, I think, is really fascinating. Because you experience this ride on a bicycle. You experienced this ride on a bicycle, which what I remember from the one time that I rode the ride, I remember thinking, oh, this is fun. I'm on a bike just like Elliot. I'm Elliot. And, that's the idea. I think that's the idea with the choice to put the audience on a bicycle. But it also doesn't make any gosh darn sense. And I won't stand for it, because the ride follows the plot of the movie for about 2.5 seconds. You're flying around above the cops and the trees, and E.T. pops up in the basket, and then he points to the second star to the right, and you fly into a portal through space and land on E.T.'s planet so that E.T. can tell them about love. And you're on a bicycle, Alice.
How did you get through space on a bicycle? I guess E.T. magic?
Probably E.T. magic, but how magical is E.T.? Because he had just almost died. His heart was bad or something. I forget the end of that movie. And he needed to go home, so he did through a portal instead of getting picked up by his alien space buddies, which is what happens at the end of the actual movie. And instead you fly on a bike to his home planet, and they sing, Alice, and you're on a bike. And as much as I really do love the first couple of moments of that ride where you're kind of soaring above Elliot's hometown and just kind of experiencing that feeling of freedom and flight, it's a really weird thing to have that completely diegetic ride vehicle, which is, it's cool because it's like bikes, but they're not like in a line. They're kind of in a box. So all the bikes feel kind of like they're flying in formation. And it kind of really is believable to that last moment of the movie where they fly on the bikes. But then to take that and put it in a completely new fiction, this kind of non-canonical E.T.'s home planet thing that's happening over here. And I mean, I love that part of the ride too. I think the animatronics are really charming. And I think the song is fun, but like, it's weird, right? Like it shouldn't be on a bike. It shouldn't be on a bike.
No, it's definitely weird. And I didn't realize how weird it was until you started talking about it. 'Cause it's so, I genuinely do not remember how that ride ended. I remember being on the bike, and I remember flying through the air. I don't remember going into space. I don't remember.
It's so weird, Alice. There's like a shaman E.T., and the shaman is like, E.T., what have you learned? And E.T. like pops out of the basket, and he's like, love. And they're like, love. And then the planet goes from all like dark and grim to like alive and bright because they remember love. And then they sing, and then at the end E.T. says goodbye to you, and he calls you by name.
Oh, boy.
Do you remember that? Where he's like, goodbye, Alice. Because he said it. It was weird. You're
right. He did say that. I remember him saying that. Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's a weird ride.
It's a weird ride. And Steven Spielberg's in a video at the beginning of the ride, and he's like, hey, I helped with this. And it's weird. It's weird.
Oh, boy.
Really
all
strange.
Right. That is really strange. Universal really does commit, though. If nothing else, they fully commit to their ride vehicles and to their when they get it right, they really do get it right. I'm gonna just entirely the entirety of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
I agree.
When they get it right, they really, really, really get it right. I mean, but when they get it wrong, it's weird.
both big rides, both dark rides in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The Hogwarts one where you're in like a flying bookcase or whatever. And the Quidditch seats maybe is where you're sitting.
And then the Gringotts one where you're in the minecart from the actual Gringotts.
Those are both absolutely perfect, and
they're
they both
really
have
good
reasons behind why they're in the universe and why you're sitting in them. And they both move and interact with the environment in a really cool, realistic way. So I love both of those choices. I want to talk about one more Universal ride before we kind of move back to our conclusion.
Are we going to talk about Transformers?
We are going to talk about the Transformers, the ride.
Oh my God, yes, thank you. I'm so glad that you brought this up.
Last time we recorded about this, I was like, oh, dang.
We forgot about Transformers. I'm so glad we're going to talk about the Transformers ride, because as much as I have no opinion whatsoever about the Transformers like IP or the universe of Transformers, I love this ride.
This ride is so strange, though, from a standpoint of whether or not this ride vehicle makes sense in universe.
It not only does it totally make sense in the ride universe, they give you they show you the specs of and the blueprints of this evac vehicle, and that's his name. I think his name is Evac.
Evac. That was his name on Cybertron for some reason, and that's his name on Earth as well. And he's here, and you're riding in him. And he's a robot that looks like a man sometimes, but also sometimes looks like a minivan with no top, no roof.
Yeah, specifically designed to transport as many people as possible, so you can fit like 20 people. Not that many. You can fit a ton of people into this ride vehicle.
This one Transformer that I will remind you is conscious and has arms that come out to deflect bullets and things.
Yes, he does. He has arms, and one of the arms has like a little shield that pops out and stuff.
Yeah,
but it's like so designed to fit. I mean, like it's on like a similar like arm as like the Harry Potter, the Wizarding World, the Hogwarts Forbidden Journey. Mm-hmm. It's on like a similar thing where you move from scene to scene through screens and through like physical sets. But because he's designed as evac, as he's designed like specifically to be an evacuation vehicle, you can fit a ton of people onto this ride vehicle, and which is so efficient for Universal, like surprisingly efficient for Universal.
Yeah, I mean, narratively efficient too. It really works out that I'm sure somebody at some point sat down and was like, is there a way we could make Optimus Prime like tow a big like truck bed full of people in this ride? And then somebody was like,
fit like 80 people onto the ride at once?
Somebody was like, no, probably not.
But maybe we can fit like 10 people on one. That would be good.
Yeah. And so what if there was a Transformer that was just a minivan?
Specifically an evacuation vehicle. And we're going to make this an evacuation, and we're going to have all of our poor cast members have to be like, go, go, go all the time.
And get on the evac, go.
Get in the evac now, go, go, go.
Oh my God.
and then you get to fly through the city as it's being, fought over by the Transformers and the bad Transformers. What are they called? Decepticons. Thank you.
The bad Transformers. I want to watch a movie where the bad Transformers and the Transformers have a fight because they don't like being called the bad Transformers.
I'm sorry. I don't know anything about the Transformers universe at all, but I really like this ride. I like the choice of motion. I like how smooth it is. I love the contrast between the screens and the physical sets. I love the giant Starscream. Is that his name?
Which one?
The bad one.
Maybe Megatron.
Is it Megatron?
Which one dies
where he's dead at the end,
yeah,
and like, but he's like a physical, like actual giant transformer, like there in your face.
Yeah.
as his eyes like flicker out and he dies right in front of you. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's fast paced and it's like thrilling. It's almost like got like roller coaster almost elements to it where you're being kind of like whipped around corners and stuff.
Yeah.
I just think it's so well done.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about that ride, and I'm being a little cheeky and pointing out how strange it is that a Transformer would be designed this way. But I think part of the cool part about the Transformers is that they kind of choose how they're shaped, and Evek kind of has this personality where he's like, "This is how I want to be. I want to move people, and
I want to help people."
That works out. So I think that's really good diegetics. Now, Alice, it's time to talk about the grandpappy of them all.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it really can't be an episode of Those Happy Places without a mention of the Haunted Mansion.
Right. I mean, let us talk long enough and we'll always circle back to the Haunted Mansion. And we got to talk about the Doom Buggies, possibly one of the world's most iconic ride vehicles. We have to talk about the Doom Buggy. And the thing is, Alice, we already kind of did earlier in the episode because, I mean, aren't they exactly the clamshells from the Little Mermaid ride?
I mean, technically, yeah.
Yeah, from like a technical standpoint.
From a technical standpoint, yeah. It's a little bench that you sit on that has a circular shield that goes up around you that controls the focus of what you can and cannot see while you're on the ride. It's got a safety bar in front of you. No seatbelts, and it rides on an Omnimover track.
The Omnimover. The thing is, Alice, is that I really can't decide how I feel about the Doom Buggies in terms of diegetics, in terms of how they exist within their universe, in terms of how they exist within the fiction, and whether or not they simply exist as a means for the audience to experience the fiction. I mean, in what universe does this haunted mansion have a trail of haunted buggies moving through it constantly? In what world does that make sense? Are they supposed to be ghostly? Like, is that the idea? Like that they're kind of floating through? I know the motion feels very floaty.
Yeah, so are they on a track, like, of course they're on a track, but like narratively, are they just supposed to be like floating chairs that take you on a tour? I feel like in the original iteration of the ride, it was supposed to be a walking tour, right?
Right, so it's just a way to keep people moving. I mean, technically that's why it's there. But
the Doom Buggy, even taken out of the context of like why we have a series of buggies within a haunted house, the Doom Buggy itself has over time gained a little bit of a following, has become iconic on its own. Like it might not technically make sense. Like, what the heck? What is it? What is a Doom Buggy? Is it being drawn by ghostly horses? Is it like a buggy? Is it? I mean, I don't.
Is it a product of the ghost host? Like, is it something that he created or like makes happen for us?
We don't know. We do know that it is named, and it's named by the ghost host. He says, "Climb into the Doom Buggy."
Yeah. And he even giggles at it, Doom Buggy. Like, haha, I made up this funny name for this vehicle.
It sounds kind of like Dune Buggy. Isn't that hilarious?
That is pretty hilarious, actually. Thanks, ghost host. And he interacts with it. He does lower the safety bar. So, like, what's interesting about the Doom Buggy, diegetically speaking, is that the ride calls it out. Talks about it, names it, interacts with it. It feels like a character. It moves in ways that points you at the most interesting stuff in the attraction. Yeah. It even kind of feels like it has its own personality. Like, it wobbles and it spins and stuff in ways that kind of feel natural. Kind of what you want to look at, it looks at. And ghosts can ride in it.
Yeah, the ghosts can hop in it and interact with it, and all of those things combined with like the kind of like almost cult-like following of the Haunted Mansion itself, of which we are fully a part of, has made it kind of this like enigma and this icon. And talking about like merch, you can buy a Doom Buggy merch, like a toy to play with. That's absolutely a thing you can do.
Yeah.
So now here's what I want to know. Not just is this diegetic or not, because I do want to know that, but also does its status as an icon of like how iconic and how like impactful it is to the rider's experience of this attraction, does that make it more or less diegetic? Does like it becoming an icon and like you becoming aware of it as a ride vehicle take away or add to the diegesis of this ride vehicle?
I wonder if I think it makes it more diegetic. I think it makes it exist more in the fiction. I think it makes it more believable that we have this weird, out of place conveyor belt style thing. You can see the ones in front of you, the ones next to you. You're really aware of the ride vehicle. And I think by the fiction and the fictional characters leaning into it, it takes away the weirdness. And then by people becoming more attached to it, like if tomorrow they like put in invisible doom buggies, say they figured it out, right? They cracked the code and they're like, just walk right here and the ghost host is going to make you float through the ride. And like, and it happened, right?
Yeah.
People would be pissed. they would lose their crap because like they'd be like, where's the doom buggies? Like, what is this newness? Stop this.
It's not quite the Haunted Mansion without the doom buggy.
And I think the doom buggy therefore has transcended the way that it looks and the way that it kind of fits or doesn't fit into the environment, and it's become more of a player in the fiction of the ride. And that excuses all of its design flaws. That makes it real for the Haunted Mansion.
And by design flaws, you mean simply like the flaw of it not
making sense.
Not making sense.
Right. The flaw of it not really existing, not having a real world analog or having a place within the fiction at all.
Right.
You can overlook all of that.
Yeah. And like we said, there are rides where that's fine if it doesn't fit into the fiction. But the Haunted Mansion, I think, is such a immersive experience. Anyways, you literally like go down an elevator and get kind of sucked in almost into the mansion itself, so you're so much in the fiction of the mansion that having a doom buggy that does not make any sense shouldn't work. It shouldn't.
You should be like, wait a second, what are these?
I am fully been sucked into by a stretching room into a mansion. I'm surrounded by scary paintings. I don't know what's going on. I'm terrified. And also, why does a mansion have this track running through it? That doesn't make any sense.
But you never find yourself asking that question. And I think that comes down to the strength of the doom buggies themselves and the ways that the narrative plays with the doom buggies and the ways
they kind of winking at it. And
I mean here's a weak deployment of a more diegetically appropriate ride vehicle, but like Pirates of the Caribbean, it's just a boat. It's a boat, and it's a weird shape for a boat. It's not a shape that any boat should be.
But kind of like a lifeboat, maybe.
Yeah, kind of, but also it's 5x5, Alice. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Here's the Splash Mountain. It's a log. that it is.
You shouldn't be able to ride a log. Like, it doesn't make actual sense.
Right.
But you know, you just do it. You go, all right, yeah, I'm gonna get in this log and go down a log flume.
Right.
Like, sure,
and
whatever.
These make nominal sense in their universes. Like, okay, I could see like a log. It's like natural. It's like the wilderness. It's whatever. We're splash mountaining. I could see a boat. Like, whatever. We're pirates. Like, these make nominal sense. The doom buggy is beyond all of that. It says, I am me. And I am great. So hop in, guys. It's an adventure. And that's why I think the Doom Buggy has its own fandom. Because it has the audacity to say that. Yeah.
It's extremely unique. And I love it. Gotta love it.
You gotta love it.
It's on an Omnimover.
It's on an praise the Omnimover.
Praise the Omnimover.
It's the Omnimover.
It is the Omnimover.
It is the Omnimover. That's true. Well, Alice, it seems like our conversation about diegetics and ride vehicles has finally come to an end.
That's right. But before we go, we want to extend some thank yous. Once again, I want to thank our listener, Gerardo, for the idea for this episode and for that really, really sweet email that he sent us.
Yes. And if you've ever looked at our show and said, there's no way they'd ever respond to an email from me, we will make an entire episode based on your ideas if we can find a way to do it, guys. We are so excited for all sorts of fan interactions. So thank you, Gerardo, again, for contacting us and asking for an episode about this. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, we also want to thank all of our listeners who have been talking to us on Twitter and on Discord. We've had a lot of amazing experiences over the last few weeks talking to people about all things theme park related. And if you want to join that conversation, you should, for one, join the conversation. And you can do so by following us on Twitter. I'm at Alice White, THP, for those happy places.
And I'm at Buddy_Duquesne. Duquesne is spelled Duquesne. And really, the conversation never ends. At the end of the episode, we suddenly become enlightened and have all sorts of great other ideas that we never got to talk about. And that's where we share them, on Twitter and Discord. So please, reach out, talk to us. We're so excited to share more ideas with you guys.
Yes, and also, Buddy, I want to thank you.
What?
Thank you for having this conversation with me 2 times now. And it's so exciting to me that we just had this second version of this conversation, and yet we talked about even more. We somehow talked even more things in the same amount of time that we did the first time. We barely touched on Universal Studios in the last episode, and I'm so glad that we sunk more into the tram ride and into the Transformers ride, things that we didn't touch on in the first version of this episode. And that ability to have that kind of conversation with you means so much to me, and I'm so glad that we have this project where we can share these conversations with everyone.
Alice, thank you so much for being such an excellent co-host. The fact is, I think we actually have sent our best version of this episode out there, and I'm so glad to share it with everybody. And I can't wait, because soon we're going to be putting together a couple of holiday episodes, and we're going to record our first episode together in the same room for the first time in 9 episodes. This is going to be so cool.
Yeah, we haven't actually had a chance to sit down and record in the same room since episode 12.
Which we recorded all the way back in the summer. So it's going to be really cool to actually do this. I can't wait to hang out with you.
This is extremely exciting. I'm so excited to see you. And I'm excited for listeners to hear these upcoming episodes. So stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah. Alice, do you have anything coming up that you wanted to share?
Sure. I'll share. The other podcast that I host, Rogue Fun, a podcast story, is we're celebrating the second anniversary of the release of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is the best Star Wars movie ever made. Don't argue with me on that.
Don't at her. Do not at her.
So yeah, for the 2-year anniversary of Rogue One, we are releasing a full 2 hour and 15-minute commentary track for the film. You'll be able to watch the film right alongside us and hear all of our thoughts and opinions and feelings and tears about the film. We had a great time recording it, and I think we hit some really, really excellent thinking points. So if you're into Star Wars, if you're into Rogue One, or if you're not into Rogue One and want to be convinced to be into Rogue One, give it a listen. We're on Twitter at RogueFunPod. And that will link you to our episodes.
Alice, I can't wait to listen to that commentary track, even though I have watched this movie with you in person, and I have watched it online with you and Ponders at the same time. I can't wait to hear what you guys talked about this time, because every time you look at Rogue One, you guys find new stuff, and that's what makes Rogue Fun so much fun to listen to. So it's going to be really amazing.
Buddy, do you have anything coming up?
Yeah, actually, Alice, I've decided that before the new year, I was going to make this a New Year resolution, but I decided I wanted to do it before the new year because why wait for an arbitrary day to start working on your goals? I've got a new podcast coming out. It's called Lemmy Mash. And I love it. It's a podcast about mashup music and the unique emotions and feelings that it can give you. And I'm starting with a couple of really great songs. I've already reached out to the mashup artists that made them. And I'm not going to spoil them here, but follow me on Twitter for more updates and look out for more episodes of Lemmy Mash. Because I am not a music theorist by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a lot of feelings about mashups that I want to share. And I think I've got some insightful things to say about these tracks that I've got lined up. So stay tuned.
I'm so excited for this podcast. You've always loved a good mashup, and you send me your best ones all the time. You have really good taste in mashups too. So I'm so excited to hear this.
Yeah, it's going to be really great. And we have a couple of other secret projects coming down the pipeline. Alice, I know about at least one from you. And I've got one that I haven't talked about yet with anybody. So hopefully those are also going to be amazing and will be out soon as well.
Yeah, stay tuned, everybody.
So, Alice, right now, did you know that our listeners are hearing our theme music?
Our theme music is Golden Gate by the California Feetwarmers featuring Phil Alvin.
By those people and featuring that person. Now, did you know that if they wanted to find more music by the Feetwarmers, they could find that and many other tracks at CaliforniaFeetwarmers.com?
I did know that. Now tell me about that extra music that you put in this episode.
Well, when I go through and I edit, I think I'm going to put in some music by Kevin MacLeod, who you can find all of his music at incomptech.com. He's an amazingly prolific composer who has released all of his tracks under Creative Commons licenses so we can use them in our episodes. So thank you, Kevin MacLeod, for sending those to us via the internet and sharing. It's very nice of you.
Thank you, Kevin. One last thank you to our listeners, everybody on Twitter and on Discord, and especially Gerardo. Thank you, Gerardo, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening, and we hope you return to those happy places.